It is 9 a.m. Saturday, the 7th of March, out across Vanuatu, and all eyes are going to be on a tropical disturbance currently located to the northeast of the nation. The JTWC, or U.S. Joint Typhoon Warning Center, is giving this feature a medium chance of development within the next 48 hours. Regional satellite imagery clearly shows that the highest concentration of convection and thunderstorms is located over and just to the northeast of the Salmon Sea. There are still no signs of any well-defined organization. Storms are rather disorganized at this time. There's really no concrete center of circulation just yet, but you can see overall across the region we are seeing an uptick in storminess, and you can also see based on the water vapor imagery that we look to have a fairly divergent pattern in the mid to upper levels of the atmosphere. You can tell that this is the case by the storms fanning out both to the north and to the south, and this is kind of something that you would like to see if you're looking for any good chance of tropical cyclone formation. One parameter that is helping to enhance the likelihood of tropical cyclogenesis over the next week is the active phase of the Madden-Julian oscillation, which is a global weather parameter that moves from west to east, and you can see that we are looking at the Indian Ocean and the southern and western Pacific basins. You can see these green contoured lines, which is indicating enhanced upward motion anomalies, which does support enhanced convection and thunderstorms. The MJO is linked to enhanced tropical cyclone activity, and this is a rather strong MJO pulse moving through the western Pacific at this time. As we turn to winds in the lower levels of the atmosphere, we can also begin to make out a westerly wind burst that is ongoing along and just to the south of the equator. Westerly wind bursts are often associated with these strong MJO pulses as they move across the western Pacific, and these westward or westerly winds are really aiding in the development of a broad low pressure center to the northeast of the Solomon Sea. This is a much closer zoomed in visible satellite view of the tropical disturbance, and just to gain better perspective, this is Nendo Island located within the Solomon Islands. So the main core of lowering surface pressures is located to the north-northeast. You can make out that there is a very broad cyclonic circulation beginning to take shape, but the convection is still dispersed well to the east, north, and even west of the center of circulation at this time. So although a tropical cyclone is more than likely in its infancy stages, it will more than likely take a couple more days for the system to really start to intensify. Now, as we also turn to the enhanced infrared, this shows some of the stronger convection as denoted by the colder cloud tops in these darker colors. And even well to the west and southwest of the circulation, we can see rounds of very heavy rainfall and even some lightning out across these smaller islands. So although the center of circulation is still well away from any major land masses, the effects of this system will be far-reaching over the next several days. This is the latest upper level winds forecast from the American GFS model, and we are looking at some of the very upper layers of the atmosphere. And in the upper layers, you really want to see a lot of divergence aloft or winds moving out away from the center of any tropical disturbance, or at least above that disturbance. And we can see a very favorable picture beginning to develop as we look off to the northeast of the Solomon Islands. You can see the model is plotting a 1003 surface low pressure center. But more importantly, as you look at the upper level wind streamline pattern, you can see the divergence with the winds fanning out in all quadrants, and it's really no wonder that the American GFS model is most aggressive with developing this system. You don't see much in the way of development over the next 24 hours, but especially between days 2 and 6, this system really begins to take off. The surface pressure gets down to about 969 hectopascals, which is already a severe cyclone. But if that weren't enough, the GFS continues to intensify the system as it moves out across Vanuatu, and eventually it's going to get picked up by a trough, so you start to see more of a southeast motion as we go into the 5 to 7 day range. We are now looking at the GFS vertical wind shear forecast between the 200 millibar and 850 millibar layers, so this is a good representation of vertical wind shear throughout the vertical column. And you can see the favorable upper level ridge, and this is basically the same thing that we just looked at. It's just another view of the same thing. A favorable upper level ridge remains directly above the tropical cyclone, and you can see that counterclockwise spin, which is an upper level ridge to the south of the equator, and this ridge stays directly above the tropical cyclone throughout its duration of moving southward toward Vanuatu, a very divergent outflow pattern, and all of the strong hostile wind shear remains well to the south, and this is the jet stream here coming out of eastern Australia, I should say, and that is going to remain well to the south of the cyclone all the way up until the time the system starts to become subtropical or non-tropical as it starts to move more toward the pole. Of course, it is always possible that the GFS is overdoing the strength of this developing tropical system, especially considering that we do not have a well-defined center of circulation just yet. However, it is somewhat concerning that we have almost unanimous model agreement. The second model that we're going to look at is the European ECMWF, a highly touted forecast model throughout the world. As we go into the next 48 hours, the system is beginning to deepen. The surface pressure is down to about 1001. But the real intensity begins to take off between days 2 and 5. You see a well-defined tropical cyclone as we go into the 96-hour or day 4 time frame. And much like the GFS, we are seeing rapid intensification as we go on into the mid to latter half of the week. And you can see, luckily, this run takes the center of the storm just to the east of some of the bigger islands here. But the margin for error is very large, especially the farther you go out into time. So the track error could be very significant. Nonetheless, we're looking at a severe tropical cyclone. The pressure is now down to 949 in the model by the end of the week as it starts to move off toward the southeast. This is a view of the mid-level steering parameters, and just to gain your bearing, this is Australia, Coral Sea, Vanuatu, the Solomon Islands, and to the northeast of the Solomon Islands, once again, is our developing broad area of low pressure. But again, we're more concerned about looking at the mid-level steering on these maps. So to the immediate south, you can begin to make out a mid-level ridge. It's oriented from east to west, from Fiji westward through Vanuatu, all the way toward the eastern coast of Australia. Over the next 2 to 3 days, the overall steering near our tropical system is going to be very weak. But as we go into the 2 to 4 day range, you're going to notice that the main core of the mid-level ridging to the south begins to shift westward towards the Coral Sea and Queensland coast, and this is going to leave a bit of a gap for our tropical cyclone to drift toward the south-southeast. And this is why there is big concern for interests out across this area, anywhere from as far east as Fiji to as far west as New Caledonia, but more so especially out across Vanuatu, as the margin for error in these models becomes quite significant days 3 and 4. And as we go into days 4 and 5, you can see the storm still directly impacting the island chain. The trough is definitely having its influence. You can see based on this pattern, there's absolutely no threat to Australia. So for anyone viewing out across coastal Queensland, there's absolutely no threat from this tropical cyclone. And you can see more evidence of that as shown here by this stronger trough that is now advancing out of New South Wales and Tasmania. This will be the trough that finally pushes the tropical cyclone out toward the southeast as we go into days 6 and 7. As for any interest out across New Zealand, it's really too far out to tell if this system is going to have any significant effects on the country as a non-tropical system. It could very well pass to the east, but it's just way too far out to really tell for sure. Keep it tuned here to the 28storms.com YouTube channel. We're going to plan on issuing more videos here over the next few days, especially as the system begins to intensify. This is going to be a week-long duration event, so there's plenty of time to monitor. This is certainly not the time to be overly concerned. We still don't even have a classified tropical cyclone yet, but if you live anywhere in this area, now is the time to make those preparations, because if you're not directly impacted, it sure as heck looks like there's going to be a fairly strong tropical cyclone at least passing very close to you. So there's more than enough reason to make those preparations now rather than later. So thanks again for watching, and keep it tuned here to 28storms.com.